Well, hello there, and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video with the Swedish space spiders. And today, it's a long video, and we are going to Eve and Gilly, and that's why the video is so long. Because we are gonna do 2 landings, and one of these landings are also going to be a return mission. I'm not gonna do them separately. I'm going to do them both in one take or whatever. What I'm trying to say is I'm going to do both missions at once with one rocket. Yeah. And as you can see here, I am now constructing a rover. This rover is going to be landing on Eve, because I thought rover feels like a good thing to put down on Eve, or a lander probe of some sorts. Because of course I do want to do a return mission from Eve at some point. But right now, I didn't really feel like I had all the bits and pieces unlocked that I would want to have to do a return mission. And I don't really need to do a return mission. You do get a whole lot of science from just transmitting every science experiment that you do. I did bring a scanning arm, as you can see, but I didn't bring a science junior on this rover either. And by either, I mean I didn't bring one in my last mission that went to Juna. Although in this mission I did remember to put a decoupler underneath the fairing part. So I don't think it actually was a decoupler. I think it was a docking port. So I decoupled the fairing with the rover in it, from the docking port. Yeah, I think I did that. And yes, I put a huge heat shield on there as well. Of course, I decided to change up the fairing as well, because I would have needed that bigger heat shield anyways, so I thought I might as well put something a little bit bigger there. And this time I did put the parachutes on the rover instead of having them on some arms on the sides, because my plan was to detach the fairing parts with the heat shield and everything from the rover and have the rover just land on his legs. You'll see in a bit, but that didn't really pan out as I thought it would. Like many things do in KSP. And what I'm building now up here is the lander that's going to go to Gilly. And since, Gilly is a very small little potato-shaped planet, or moon, and you don't need that much delta V or that much power to get to it. So I overbuilt this very much. I thought it would be in a very much lower orbit around Eve when going to Gilly. So I thought I would have needed all of that fuel more. But it didn't turn out that way. I just left my main stage in a higher orbit, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But yes, I was talking about it before. I did have a decoupler on the docking port there, it looks like, and it did look a little bit weird. I remember that it looked like my fairing part was like elevated above the decoupler, and there was nothing holding them together. So it does look a little bit weird, but it worked. I had a decoupler nonetheless. And yes, going with a liquid fuel engine. And of course I am going to overbuild this, so I'm gonna have way more fuel than I actually need. It would probably have been enough to have those small tanks on the sides there, but I decided, no, I want some bigger tanks. Some reaction wheels, of course, to be able to turn this thing, because it's heavy. It's very, very heavy. Some extendable solar panels. There was the word. Sorry. Some extendable solar panels on top there, and some non-extendable and just stationary solar panels on the bottom there, so I can always have something bringing me electric power if I would forget to open up those solar panels, of course. And let's see, yes, I did put a little probe core on this thing as well, the lander that's gonna land on Gilly, because I wanted to be able to deorbit it once I had redocked with my mothership and transferred all the science and stuff. I really thought I don't want to leave it there and leave all that space debris hanging around. Of course, leaving space debris is always a bad thing, so I decided to put a little probe core on there. Some relay antennas on there, of course, so we can have a little bit of contact with our rover, and also so it's easier to steer that Gilly lander when we are gonna deorbit that. And now I didn't have any fuel tanks that matched this fairing, so it does look a little bit weird having that big fairing and then having the tank underneath be smaller than the fairing itself. But well, it's the beginning, still kind of in the beginning of unlocking everything, so I still have a little bit ways to go before I can build everything nice and beautifully looking. So right now I don't focus that much on the aesthetics. I just focus mostly on being efficient and having everything work as it should. And yes, like you could see there, I did change the position a little bit of my my rover there and how it was coupled to the mid stage or the mothership stage. Cause yeah, it did look a little bit weird. I had a hard time getting that fairing in as well. I remember that now. I haven't talked at all about the transfer stage that I have now. Anyhow, the transfer stage, no, not the transfer stage. I meant the launch stage, my first stage. Just a couple of 2.5 meter tanks on the side there, and some. Now I forgot the name of the engine. Fudge. They're not the Mammoth engine. Mainsail. Thank you to myself that came up with it. Mainsail engines. 3 mainsail engines. That was just enough to get us almost to orbit, at least to a suborbital trajectory. And then I thought, I do have so much fuel with me in the liquid fuel stages, in the upper stages. So I didn't really need a separate stage to get me into orbit and then start using these stages. So I thought I could just use this stage to get me the last little bit into orbit. And also something you're gonna notice in a little bit now, since this video is so long, I decided to cut out some of the time warping bits and pieces. So you're gonna see me make this maneuver node the maneuver node that I made to get back, I don't think you get to see me do it, but you do get to see me burning it, doing the burn at the maneuver node marker. And then I cut out the part, for when I'm going from Kerbal to Eve and from Eve to Kerbal. Those parts are cut out. The video is anyways gonna be, 25 minutes long, something like that. Most definitely the longest video so far. But I mean, it has a reason why it is so long, and that is, of course, we do have 2 landings, and we also have some a bit funny mishaps during our landing at Eve, because, well, landing at Eve is never easy, and physical time warp can sometimes not work as it should. The Kraken has a tendency to come and attack you when you use physical time warp, especially in a high gravity environment like being around Eve. And here I think, now I cut out the transferring between Eve and between Kerbal and Eve, of course. And now you can just see me doing my orbital burn. And we're not gonna do actually a circularization burn, because we're not gonna be circularized. We are gonna keep this kind of oval shaped orbit for the whole duration of this mission. And there's another cut that comes here, because I tried deorbiting my Eve rover a bunch of times and decoupling it when I was at Apoaps, which didn't work because it ran out of electricity very fast. So I decided instead of doing this approach, where I decouple it closer to periapsis while still being in a lower orbit, or a low orbit enough to go into the atmosphere so far that I would land. And then I just had to burn radial out to get my mothership out of there and into a higher orbit. And and then just let my rover go down and disappear into the atmosphere. Now, it didn't disappear, of course. Get it to land. Getting a little bit of heat there, as you can see. And now try not to do the landing itself. And now is when the tricky part comes. Doing physical time warping with all the parts together was no problem. And I decided this time to open up the parachutes first, and then decoupling the stage underneath me. And that worked pretty good, except for, as you can see, my wheels are no longer in its correct orientation. And then I did try to do some physical time warping, and I immediately left the solar system and went somewhere else. So luckily enough, I had done a quick save before this. Test number 2, I tried to land the whole thing with the fairing stage still attached. When I decoupled that, I broke a couple of wheels. I think it was 3 wheels got broken, and I tried a bunch of stuff to try and drive it around, but that didn't work. And once more, I accidentally pressed on my physical time warp, and it didn't work. And the final one, there were more than this. I just have to say that, put that out there. There were more tests than this, but I finally got it down. And as you could see, it was on its head. and by the magic of editing, you didn't have to see me cheat it into its position that it is in now. Yes, I did use a little bit of cheating to get it to stay right up or on its side, I guess. Anyhow, on its wheels. I did use cheating and I did cut it out, but I'm saying it now so you all know. Yes, I admit it. I did cheat a little bit. But I was on a time schedule and I really wanted to make this mission happen this day. Otherwise, I guess my only other option would have been to either abort the whole mission, just land it and use whatever science experiments I could and skip the scanning, or do a whole new mission where I replaced my parachutes further up front. But I didn't want to do that. Anyhow, now we have left Eve, and now we're gonna try and get to Gilly and land our little lander probe, or lander can. Yeah, it's not a probe, lander can, on the very little moon. Not moon. I always say moon nowadays when I'm talking about a moon. And they're so similar, the words. So it's not hard to just like accidentally say the wrong word. Anyhow, we're switching our trajectory a little bit, and decoupling our outer stages there. So now we have not as much engines, but we also not have as much fuel. So our thruster weight is kind of the same. I think we lost just a little bit of thruster weight. But those tanks are also very heavy. So in general, I think we did the best choice of not keeping those on. And now let's see if we can get an encounter, and yes, we can. And you can also see that the nodes are flickering back and forth a whole lot. And I've noticed there's a whole lot of those bugs lately, especially when you try to do a rendezvous with another craft, or when you try to get into the sphere of influence of another planet. The nodes can just disappear, or they can flicker around and just end up somewhere else. I don't know why, and it's really annoying. Really annoying. Because you don't want to miss out on an encounter or a rendezvous possibility. Anyhow, we are actually getting into Gilly's little, very little sphere of influence here, and getting into an orbit, having to almost take out all of our speed, our vertical speed there. And now I'm gonna just try and go pretty much straight down. I even changed the way of my orbit there because I wanted to land in the light side of the planet. I didn't end up landing in a very light spot anyways, but at least it's kind of light. And this is the thing that I hate about landing on this little moon, because it just takes such a long time, because you can't time warp when you're below like 8,000 meters, I think. And if you go anywhere like above 40 meters per second in speed away from Gilly, you are leaving its sphere of influence. That's how small it is. And here you can see I'm just doing some science experiments, of course, getting inside again, and then I just remembered, of course, I needed to plant a flag as my craft was floating away from me, I just planted the flag real quickly and got in again, and went straight up once more. And now we have done all the experiments for this whole mission, I think. So no more experiments to do. Now we only need to get back to Kerbin. Well, first we need to rendezvous these two modules. Our Gilly lander and our Eve return capsule, as it's probably called now. And my calculations weren't the best when I calculated how much fuel I would need for this craft, because I totally forgot that most of the craft's weight was gonna be left in Eve's atmosphere, or down on Eve and be smashed or burn up in the atmosphere. Like, of course, the upper part that was the rover, and this part that is the lander. So we're gonna have a whole bunch of fuel left to go back to Kerbin, and we actually got a pretty good transfer window to Kerbin. So we're not gonna waste that much fuel either. We could have done with a whole lot of less fuel. I could probably have gone back with this thing. I wouldn't have needed my other mothership, but of course that has the parachutes and stuff. So most definitely want to go back with that one and not this one. And now we're going into a little bit of a docking procedure. I don't think I had any RCS thrusters on my Gilly lander. Maybe I did. I forgot. I can't really see that either. No, I didn't have any. I only had them on the mothership. So I had to dock the mothership to the lander instead of doing it the opposite way around, which is probably how you would do it. And now just decoupling and deorbiting that lander. And finally, we are now going back to Kerbin. And also I cut out now a whole bunch of time where I just time warped around Eve to get into a good position. And yeah, now this is just the burning time. And I'm inside the cockpit for once. I rarely go in cockpits and look around and stuff. But it's there's a lot of funny Easter eggs and stuff inside there. So I really should go in there and look at that more often. Because it's the interior of many of the different lander cans and stuff are just beautiful. And yeah, I accidentally overshot a little bit there. I did do a mid-course correction. I cut that out. So just believe me, please. I've been honest with my cheating before, but I rarely use the cheat menu nowadays. There was a time where I used it a lot, just so I wouldn't get Kerbals stranded everywhere. Just to get them that little extra push home or something like that. But I've never used it for anything else than just good old fun or to save a Kerbal's life. So I've only used it in the last possible, as a last possible solution. Anyhow, we are now doing our landing and getting all that science back. And I think it's a good time for me now to say thank you so much for watching, and like, subscribe. Have a good one. See you, and bye-bye.